Hello class, welcome back to our distance learning program. Right now you are looking at the slide lesson that we are going to cover in our first session. So this subject is the writing Write 3 subject, which mainly focus on the writing structure. Now we are on the unit 6, which the topic is conjunctions. So from the previous video, we have already talked about the different type of conjunctions and how to use comma with a different type of conjunction, which we have coordinating conjunction and subordinating conjunctions. So in this video lesson, we will focus on two main points. The first one, we will look at different types of sentences. Why we look at these different type of sentences? Because as we have learned the basic concept of conjunctions, they function to combine two clauses together or two sentences together. So when two sentences combine together, it will become another different type of sentences. That is why you should understand the different structure of the sentences. Last but not least, we will learn some common mistakes that mostly occur when using or when linking two sentences together. So to avoid those mistakes, you should look at all of those mistakes in advance. So without any further ado, let's look at our type of sentences. So in English structure, we have a different type of sentences. And what I mean the type of sentences here in this context, I want to emphasize the structure of the sentences. I'm not talking about the function of the sentences, right? So the structure of the sentences here, we have a simple sentence, a compound sentence, and last but not least, a complex sentence. However, there are another one type of sentence, which is a compound complex sentence. But it's the main idea is just the mix together with the compound sentence and a complex sentence. So it's to understand those, you need to understand these three main type of sentences. So what is simple sentence, what is compound sentence, and what is complex sentence? So to answer this question, here I prepare some of the key points that easily understandable. First, if you say this sentence is a simple sentence which has only one independent clause. So to distinguish between sentence and clause, when we talk about sentence, we emphasize on the meaning. Is it this sentence has a complete meaning, so we call it sentence. However, when we talk about clause, we talk about the structure, whether it has the subject or verb or not. So when we focus on the structure, we call it clause. But when we look at the clause that has complete meaning, we call it an independent clause, or it is simply a sentence. So a simple sentence refers to any type of sentences that has only one independent clause. However, if it is a compound sentence, which means it has two or more independent clauses joined by a conjunction, right? So as we have already learned, we learn about conjunction. So these used to form a compound sentence. So each of these clauses come from a sentence alone. So when we look at this, it means that a compound sentence are sentences that has two independent clauses and joins together by conjunction, right? However, if it is a complex sentence, which means it consists of an independent clause plus a dependent clause, and it needs conjunctions to link these two clauses together. And the conjunctions that used to form a complex sentence, mostly they are subordinating conjunctions. However, when we link two independent clauses together, we call it compound sentence. They use the coordinating conjunction, which are the fan voice, right? So to clearly see these type of sentences, I have prepared some of the examples. So there are 4 examples represent each type of sentences that we have just discussed earlier. So the first sentence, I go to school with my best friends every day. So this sentence, it has only one independent clause, which is I function as the subject, go function as verb, to school with my best friends, these are the preposition, we call it prepositional phrase. So prepositional phrase here, it functions as the object of the word go. So this sentence is called simple sentence because it has only one independent clause. If you look at the second example, I study in grade 11, but he studies at grade 12. So which means we have two independent clause. I study and he studies. And then it links together with the word but, which means these independent clauses has a contradict meanings. It contrasts with each other. Last, we have the third example. She really wants to see Uncle Wat because her dad talks about it, right? So these third example represent the complex sentences because, as you can see, she really wants to see Uncle Wat. This is an independent clause. However, the other part, because her dad talked about it, which is the dependent clause. So these are the example of the complex sentence. And as you notice, we use the conjunction because in order to link this clause together. Last but not least, although they are singers, they can dance on stage too. So although they are singers, which is the dependent clause, and they can dance on stage too, which is the independent clause. So these are combined or mixed together, it becomes a complex sentence, right? So again, when we talk about the type of the sentences, we focus on the structure of the sentences itself. So why should we learn those different type of sentences? What's to do with conjunction, right? As we already learned conjunction, is it important to understand the type of sentences? Sure, it is important. Why? So if you go through your books, here are the reasons why you should use the different type of conjunction. A different type of sentences with conjunctions to form those different type of sentences. So if you are a good writer, you should use a different type of sentences effectively. You cannot just use simple sentence again and again in your writing. But you should use a different type of sentences because each type of sentences has a different purpose. If you look at this explanation here, a simple sentence is very effective for grabbing a reader attention. But using too many simple sentences make the writing sound choppy or boring, right? So try to use a different structure, a different type of sentences. The variety of your sentence structure is very important in your writing. For a compound sentence, it's effective for expressing a balance or contrast between two equally important ideas. Last but not least, a complex sentence is effective for expressing that one idea is more important than the other, right? So a different type of sentences has slight different purposes. So use the different type of sentences effectively. And one major point to use different type of sentences is to make your writing more interesting. Your writing has different variety, so it will be interesting for the reader to read. Alright, so these are the reason why you should learn a different type of sentences. Now let's move on to the last part that we are going to discuss today, which is the common mistakes. So when using conjunction, mistakes mostly occur and in the form of run-on. So what is run-on? So to understand the word run-on, we should look at some common mistakes altogether. So run-on, there are problems with punctuations actually. So when we join two independent clauses by a comma, which is known as run-on, it is wrong to join two independent clauses by only a comma. Another example of run-on is two independent clauses joined with no punctuation. Again, if you join it with comma, it's wrong. If you join two independent clauses with no punctuation at all, it is wrong. Last but not least, a dependent clause that ends with a period is also wrong, which is known as run-on. So as you notice here, the mistakes that occur in the conjunctions lesson mostly about punctuation, comma and full stops, something like that. So here are some examples that are the run-on sentences. Number one, here the first one, I like this class. It is very interesting. As you can see, we have two independent clauses. I like this class. It is very interesting. But it cannot join together into one sentence like this with just a comma. So what should you do? You should use conjunctions. So I like this class because it is very, very interesting. Number two, my best friend is very smart. I have learned a lot from him. So there are two independent clauses here. My best friend is very smart. I have learned a lot from him. Actually, these are two different sentences. So what you need to do is to use full stop here to correct this mistake, or if you don't want to split it into two sentences, you can use conjunctions to join this two sentences together. Last but not least, we have the last example. Although I have a good idea. So although I have a good idea is the dependent clause, which is not supposed to end with a period. It actually ends with a comma. Okay, so be careful with the use of conjunction. Try to specifically look for an error when using comma or full stop. So everyone, that's it for our first video lesson that focus on the writing grade 3. If you have any question to ask, feel free to ask your teachers in our online study group. Now everyone, enjoy your short breaks and we will continue our second sessions.